form of Krishna comes before my path of vision, my heart, injured from being beaten, will be stolen away by Cupid, happiness personified. Because I could not see the beautiful form of Krishna to my heart's content, when I again see his form, I shall decorate the phases of time with many jewels. So these are examples, we could say examples of love and separation, but also it's an example of what Prabhupada calls is Krishna anxiety. Anxiety for how to love Krishna, how to love him more than I'm loving him today, right? So I just mentioned that I believe this eagerness, true, authentic eagerness, has to be rooted in humility. And it has to be rooted in Shuddha Sattva, beyond the fluctuations of the modes of passion and ignorance. So there's another beautiful verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 2nd chapter, 20th verse. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. And this verse is defining this Shuddha Sattva and the fruits of this Shuddha Sattva. It says, those established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened. And when we say enlivened, what does that mean? It means enlivened by eagerness. So one whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord, such a person gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. So yeah, this realized and authentic eagerness, one's mind becomes enlivened with knowledge of the personality of Godhead. And this brings us to the stage of liberation. So there are examples in the Madhurya Kadambini of eagerness. On the other hand, the inappropriate, immature eagerness of a neophyte devotee. So some examples are given there. One is called Utsaha Mayi, when a young student or a young Brahmin boy, he's just started going to school and he's very puffed up and thinks that he's mastered all the Sanskrit grammar. So he's just started, but he's very puffed up that he's become a big Sanskrit scholar. So he's kind of puffed with this immature enthusiasm, right? Another example is called Ghana Tarala, when someone who's a beginner, a neophyte in devotional service, sometimes they're very diligent, sometimes negligent, sometimes they chant their japa, sometimes they fall asleep. So this is called Ghana Tarala, or thick and thin, right? Then the next one is Vyudha Vikalpa, when the mind vacillates between a life of renunciation and householder life. Maybe I should be like Bhaktivinoda Thakur and get married and have a dozen kids. Or maybe I should become like Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj and renounce the world. And the mind just vacillates back and forth, right? So that's Vyudha Vikalpa. Then the next example is called Vishaya Sagara, which is an ongoing battle with the desires and an inability to give up sense pleasures. Vishaya Sagara, he's in the ocean of material desires. And then Niyamak Shama, inability to follow rules. So the first one was inability to give up, or the one just before was the inability to give up sense pleasure. And this one is the inability, similar, but the inability to follow devotional service and makes resolutions and is unable to carry them out. Like we always hear people make New Year's resolutions, but very typically people are unable to carry out those resolutions. And then the last one in this list is called Taranga Rangini, which means kind of getting tangled up in the weed-like facilities of bhakti. So sometimes when someone becomes a devotee, especially this happens in India, they get a lot of respect. Like a brahmachari puts on saffron cloth and all of a sudden he's considered a big sadhu and he gets lots of material gain or worship or position. So taking delight in the material facilities of bhakti, this is also one of the symptoms of immature or inappropriate eagerness, right? So last week in the class I gave in the part 1, I was giving lots of examples of inappropriate eagerness in our services. And just to give you an example, let's see, how many of you were here for that one? So there's 23 people on this call right now, and maybe most of you were not here. So let me give you some examples of what do I mean by inappropriate eagerness? I mean, eagerness is eagerness, right? It should be great. But inappropriate eagerness, let me give you an example. There's a story of one teacher. She was a teacher in the Gurukula in Dallas, Texas in the early days. And she was taking on a lot of, watching a lot of children. She was an ashram teacher as well as an academic teacher. And she was trying to be very, very strict. And she was quite stressed from doing this service. And so what happened was Srila Prabhupada came there and he was giving a class. Srila Prabhupada was lecturing in the temple room. And while he was speaking, a little girl began to cry. And so this teacher didn't know what to do. So she took the little girl out of the temple room and she took her into a classroom and put her in a corner on the floor on a mat. And she said, "You just stay here and just stay here and be quiet." And then the teacher went back into the temple room to listen to Srila Prabhupada's lecture. So then what happened was, when Srila Prabhupada finished his lecture, he got off the Vyasasana, he walked out of the temple room, he walked down the hall, right into that classroom where the teacher had put this little girl all by herself. And the little girl had fallen asleep in the corner. And when she heard Srila Prabhupada walk in, she said, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada." And she offered her obeisances to Prabhupada. And then Srila Prabhupada walked right up to her and he was stroking her head and speaking to her and encouraging her, and with so much love and compassion. So to me, it's a very striking story. Srila Prabhupada could obviously feel the suffering of this little girl who'd been put by herself in this classroom. And the teacher who wrote the story, she said she got a great lesson from Srila Prabhupada about how we should be teaching with love and compassion. So to me, this is an example of an inappropriate eagerness. She wanted to hear Srila Prabhupada speak on Srimad Bhagavatam, but her eagerness to hear from Srila Prabhupada was at that time inappropriate, because what she should have done is taken that little girl out and soothed her and calmed her down and held her on her lap, right? Obviously, the mother of the little girl was not there. She was alone under the care of the teachers. So to me, this is a very poignant example of inappropriate eagerness. So if it's all right that I repeat another example, because I think quite a number of you weren't there last time, let me repeat another one. I'll just tell a couple. So another one is, I can tell more if there's time at the end. We'll see what there's time for. Another example is when Srila Prabhupada was leaving from an airport lounge and the devotees were having a kirtan. So they were very enthusiastic and eager to engage in kirtan for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada, right? But what happened was the airport officials were very unhappy and they were going around to the different devotees saying, "You must leave the airport lounge immediately." And all the devotees were just ignoring them, just like, "Leave us alone, leave me alone, I'm in ecstasy. Why are you bothering me when I'm in ecstasy?" And none of the devotees would obey the airport officials, until finally one of the leaders, Rupanuga Prabhu, he couldn't get anyone. He was trying to follow the instructions of the airport officials. And so he stood up on one of the chairs and very loudly he said, all the devotees must leave the airport lounge immediately. And still all the devotees were just ignoring him like, why are you bothering us? We're in ecstasy having kirtan for Prabhupada. And nobody did anything. But there was one devotee who stood up to leave the lounge. And guess who that was? Srila Prabhupada. The one devotee was humble and obedient to the instructions, and he got up to leave the airport lounge. So to me, this is an example of inappropriate eagerness to chant the holy name for the pleasure of the spiritual master. I have many, many more examples, and I'm hoping that maybe you'll think of some examples too. So my point here is that eagerness has to be coupled with or rooted in humility. Otherwise, it's a bit of a disruption. It's inappropriate, and it's a disturbance, right? So I can give you more examples, but yeah, so I wanted to tell another story that sometimes Krishna is actually reciprocating with our eagerness. Sometimes we think, oh, you know, I'm chanting and Krishna doesn't hear my prayers and he's not, you know, when is Krishna going to ever answer my prayers? Never, probably. So I want to tell you a story. There was a Babaji living in Vrindavan, and his name was Jaya Krishna Das Babaji. And he was an old sadhu, and he was chanting very, very sincerely all day, doing his bhajan. But what happened was the neighborhood boys in that village were coming around and bothering him all the time. And so he thought, I'm leaving this village. I'm going to go somewhere else where it's more peaceful, where I can do my bhajan. But the village people thought it was very inauspicious if he would leave their village. So they built him a little hut where he could do his bhajan in peace. So he was then doing his chanting in the hut. And then what happened was he's chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. And the boys, neighborhood boys, are knocking on the door. Baba, we're thirsty. Give us water. Give us water. And he's trying to ignore them. Why are you bothering me? I'm just trying to do my bhajan and everybody's bothering me all the time. And so finally they got so strong. Baba, we're thirsty. Give us some water. So finally he opened the door, and he saw these most beautiful cowherd boys. One was a little bit swarthy, kind of a bluish black complexion. He had a little peacock feather in his hair. The other one was very whitish, and he was wearing blue. The other one was wearing yellow. And so they're saying, Baba, we're thirsty, give us water. And this Babaji, Jai Krishna Das Babaji, was so overwhelmed by the beauty that he went to get water, but he was giving them water, and he was just staring into the faces of these beautiful cowherd boys. And those beautiful cowherd boys were also staring into his face. And so he was just pouring the water, and the water was going all over the floor and all over his feet, because he was just staring into their faces and they were staring into his face, until finally they left, and he closed the door. And then he realized, oh no, these two boys, these are the goal of my bhajan. These are my lords, Krishna and Balaram. And he told them to, then he looked and they were gone. They had already disappeared. So very beautiful, beautiful story from Sri Vrindavan Dham. So sometimes we have our eagerness, but we feel like Krishna is not reciprocating, right? So then there's another verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto. Yan astaya naro rajan na pramadyeta karhichit davan nimilya va netre na skalen na patet iha. One who accepts the process of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead will never blunder on his path in this world. Even while running with eyes closed, he will never trip or fall. So what does that mean? It means someone who's running with their eyes closed, they're really, really running somewhere with a lot of eagerness, right? So what does that mean? running with eagerness, running with eyes closed, eager to achieve something, right? With a lot of sincerity. But with eyes closed, it represents, the two eyes represent the Shruti and the Smriti, the two types of Shastra. So it means that running with eyes closed means one may be ignorant of the knowledge of the Shruti and the knowledge of the Smriti, but the path of Bhagavad Dharma is so powerful that even if a seer devotee is ignorant, that's because of the sincerity of performing devotional service, they will never, such a devotee will never stumble and fall. So, yeah, so just like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita in the 10th chapter, verses 10 and 11, that that even if the devotee is lacking in spiritual knowledge, the Lord will personally enliven him within the heart if we're engaged in devotional service. Whereas in other processes like karma or jnana or mystic yoga, some slight mistake or mispronunciation or something like that, like the story of King Nriga in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. He gave a cow to a Brahmin, but then that cow wandered back into his herd. And so then he gave that cow again by mistake to another Brahmin. And then there was a fight between the two Brahmins. So this is very typical of karma kandya activities, that even a slight mistake can cause some kind of havoc, right? But this verse about being running with the eyes closed is about having authentic sincerity and authentic eagerness. And to me, it speaks about a Madhyamadikari devotee who may not be fully expert in all of the conclusions of Vedic or Vaishnava Shastra, but is very full of eagerness in fixed faith and sincerity, right? So have you ever heard before what is the Latin root of the word sincerity? So it comes from a Latin word sincera. Sincera means, like in the olden days when the men used to be selling marble, whatever the Latin word for agarwal was, they were selling marble. Sometimes they would cheat, and if there were holes in the marble, they would fill up the holes with wax and then sell it as first-class marble. So without sincera means without wax, without adulteration. So to be sincere means to be without any ulterior false motives, to be completely authentic and sincere. So I think we need to really work and very hard to uplift our ISKCON culture to rise above the immature judgmentalism and critical mentality of the Kanista or neophyte devotees. And eagerness that's not grounded in deep humility can be very disruptive and disturbing to one's own faith or the faith of others. So I believe we need to really aspire for humility and sincere eagerness that we read about in the lives and the prayers of the great Uttamadikaris, devotees, the highly realized devotees, because they live so far beyond judgmentalism and fault finding, and their lives are rooted in a deep taste for the rasayana kata, or the life-giving descriptions of Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes, and the glories of his beloved devotees. So these are some thoughts. This is part 2 of my values class on eagerness. And I gave, for those of you who are in part one class, I gave 2 assignments. So I don't know if any of you would like to share your thoughts on those assignments, or if any of you have any responses to that. But let me tell you what the 2 assignments were. The first one was I asked if someone could give an example of a neophyte or inappropriate eagerness either in yourself or without naming the person, something you've seen or maybe something we've discussed, an example of sincerity without full knowledge. Like, in other words, this kind of inappropriate neophyte eagerness, right? So that was the first question or assignment. And then the second one, I'll tell you both of them at once, and then let's see if anyone would like to share anything. So the second one was a question: what is an example of real eagerness or deeply realized eagerness, rooted in humility, rooted in deep realization? What's an example? Or would you like to give an affirmation that maybe I asked if someone would like to write an affirmation from within their own heart of authentic eagerness? So those are my two questions for you. Those are my two assignments. Would anyone like to respond and share anything, any realizations of the appropriate or the inappropriate eagerness?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Dandavat
Pranam. Dandavat Pranam. So I am reminded of the appropriate eagerness, Mataji, in the eagerness which is appropriate for the occasion of Vidurani, wife of Vidura.
Wow, beautiful. Please tell. Please tell.
When Lord Krishna was invited for what you call well laid out lunch by Duryodhana, and nearby only Vidur was staying in his quarters. So we thought he declined to entertain Duryodhana's request. So the Lord went to Vidurani without any prior information. And it was a lunch time. And she knew that this is a lunch time and he has come and I have to offer. So she gave the bananas by peeling them. She gave the peels only to the Lord, Krishna. And threw the stuff inside bananas in the corner. So that I feel is such a, in ecstasy, she has, in the eagerness to serve him, she has done this. So it was not taken as any fault, and the Lord consumed those peels, which only when Vidur came to their house, she came to know, what is this corner bananas lying? Then he inquired, she told, and she also realized. So she was in ecstasy actually, till her husband pointed out, what is that in the corner? I am seeing bananas thrown.
That's
Thank
the
you,
best example. Beautiful. Thank you. Such a beautiful example that we can aspire for, right? So sometimes on this continuum, maybe I'm a little bit more like Duryodhana right now, but I have to aspire to be like Vidurani. Thank you. A beautiful example. Anyone else like to share their thoughts on appropriate, ecstatic eagerness, or maybe inappropriate, something you've seen in yourself or something you've seen in someone else? Don't mention someone's name, but maybe you saw something that was inappropriate. Or
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, I don't know whether it is correct or not, but one example in my life, what I experienced, I would like to share. Many years back, so I had decided that I will offer bhoga to Lord Krishna and Radharani at particular time from 12:30 to 1:30 in afternoon. And one day I had prepared bhoga, kept everything ready, but I thought still time is there. So I had gone to my neighbor's place. Just I visited there. And then, yes, it was in my mind that by 12:30 I have to reach home to offer bhoga. But that lady her mother was so insisting, sit now, what is the hurry? What is the hurry? You sit down and just let us talk. But I was always, my eyes were looking at the clock. So now time is, means I have to go. But I did not tell her that for what reason I want to go. I said, no, I have to go. And finally, it was it was getting late and late. So I had decided that by 1:30 I have to anyway offer. So that day, by the time I reached home and opened the door, it had passed 1:30. So immediately I removed my slippers and just went to see and just apologized that it is delayed. So please excuse me today. Like that, I just went and I saw that both the deities, they are not they are not on their throne. So I just could not find them, and I was so anxious. Where have they gone? Like that, I felt like crying. Then I saw both of them, they were lying down. And that day I promised my deities that in future, whenever, if I am nearby or in the house, you will get your bhoga by between 12:30 to and 1:30. And Mataji with their blessings, means whenever I am at home, I am trying to just offer by within this time. So that was one of my experience, Mataji. I don't know whether it is correct or wrong, but that. Thank you, Mataji.
So in this case, they were eager for your offering. Wow, that's a good lesson.
Here once I had got this experience that Krishna had fallen from this thing. So, and this was the second time. Then I thought in future I should not commit this mistake because they are hungry and they need my bhoga. That's what it came to my mind. It is not that just out of some ritual I am doing. They are hungry. That's what I felt. And from that time, I tried to offer in time. Thank you.
Thank you. They're hungry for your love. They're hungry for your devotion. So thank you so much.
Pray for me that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any thoughts about great examples of authentic eagerness, or maybe eagerness that's not so appropriate, that is on the beginning platform? Anyone else have any thoughts?
Mataji, I can share something about inappropriate eagerness from my own example. I'm still a beginner, but really in the beginning stages of my association with ISKCON. Probably 3 months, I had been associated with ISKCON for 3 months, and my parents are very attached to me, and I started calling them Karmi. Stopped, going to their place, and I stopped eating anything there. And it was really demonic the way I treated them. So, and I just felt that I was going to become a pure devotee in another 6 months. And, these people are karmis, and I don't need to associate with them. And, but better sense prevailed. My Guru Maharaj actually, when I met him and I told him, Maharaj, my parents are karmi. And he said, just because you've become a devotee does not mean you'll divorce your parents. So that was a wonderful lesson for me. And I realize now that how crazy was that behavior. And it is so horrible, and it can turn people really off devotion. They will never come to devotional service if we behave like this.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you. I really think we should erase this word karmi from our vocabulary. There's some words that we read in Prabhupada's books, but when we misapply them, it can become very, very disruptive and disturbing. And you're right, people will not want to come to Krishna consciousness. I had an example I shared last time about that word karmi too. Maybe you remember. I'll tell it again just in case. I think some of you were not on that call. Let's see how many people are. There are 26 people here, so some of you weren't there. So this is an example when my son Gauravani was in Gurukula in Gita Nagari. The neighbors who lived next door to the temple property, they owned the property where there was a nice swimming place for the boy, and they allowed the Gurukula boys to come and swim in their swimming hole at the river. And so the boys were swimming there, and so one day our kids were there, and the owners of that property, their children were there too. And one of the little Gurukula boys, he said, let's go swim somewhere else where there's no karmis. And, of course, these neighbors, they don't know what the word karmi means, and neither did this little boy, frankly. And so, but they, it was just the way the word was used was so derogatory that it sounded so horrible to them. So just imagine. So we really need to erase these words from our vocabulary and not misapply them. So thank you. That's a great example of inappropriate enthusiasm.
Mataji,
Yes.
I also made similar mistakes, so I will not repeat. Sitarani Mataji knows very well. We came in touch with devotees almost together, so I will not repeat the whole story. But today her parents are devotees, initiated devotees. Her brother is an initiated devotee, And like similarly, my parents, they are into devotional things, coming into devotional things slowly and slowly, doing some seva for the Lord. My father is reading Bhagavad Gita and other Prabhupada books also. So what a blunder we people made at those times. So today they are, as I told you, her parents are initiated devotees. Her brother is also initiated devotee, and she was calling them karmis just because we had joined 3 months before them.
Yeah, it's so inappropriate, right? So inappropriate. Let me think. Other stories. Yeah. So many inappropriate exchanges. Anybody else have any thoughts of appropriate? There's Balaji Priya. Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo. So you probably have a story of your parents also.
No, I had to follow the same lines with Sita Rani. I didn't call them karmis, but I was in the mood of teaching them that, this is how you do it. But after so many years, I think after 17 years, my mother just told me yesterday that she kept Ekadashi this time, both my parents. So
Oh my goodness.
nice. It's just very
So
nice.
little by little,
I
little
want
by little.
There's one story which I like so much about eagerness or enthusiasm is Raghunath's offering to the Lord. Please eat. Please eat. I just absolutely love this story so much. Is
The
that,
little boy. Can you tell the story?
I don't remember the names exactly, but there is where it's in a temple. They have, I think it's Udupi Krishna, I'm not sure. And the father is always offering to the deity, and he's a 5-year-old Raghunath. Radhanath Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj, he usually narrates his story. Alalanath temple, that's what Rangadevi Sivini is saying. Where, so he would always offer, and then one day he said that Raghunath, he called his son Raghunath, please come, because I have to go somewhere, so please you make the offering to the Lord today. And so the little boy came, and he started offering, and then after saying all the mantras, he made the offering, and then he's just standing there and he's saying, but Lord, you're not eating. Please eat. If you don't eat, my father will shout at me, please eat. And the Lord is just there standing, and and then Raghunath is saying again and again, please eat, my Lord, because if you don't eat, my father will be so angry. So eat, please eat. And the Lord came and he ate the entire offering. And then, when he finished, Raghunath went to his mother and said, okay, the Lord has eaten. And the mother says, it's an empty plate. What have you done, you naughty boy? You're stealing all the bhoga, all the prasad. And now your father is going to come from the market. He's so hungry, I have to cook for him again. So then she chastised the boy and Raghunath went away. And then I think she cooked again. And I think again the same thing happened. I think she cooked and she was cooking, and by the time the father came, and she told the father the whole story, and the father said, okay, let him offer again. So he was standing behind the pillar, and this little boy is making the offering, and he says again, please eat, my Lord, please eat. And and the father sees that with the love of this Raghunath, he's just 5 years old, but with the love of Raghunath, the Lord is actually eating. So I find this very
Beautiful.
very
So
beautiful.
this is the example of authentic eagerness. And see how simple he was, Our brains are so complex, but he was so simple. So if we can actually, your Guru Maharaj is very fond of saying, be simple, sincere, and without ulterior motive. So this is very important. If we want to really be authentically eager, we have to be simple, sincere, without ulterior motive. So that's a beautiful example. Thank you so much. Haribo. Love that story. Anybody else have any stories they'd like to share? The good, the bad, the ugly. What would you like to share? Nilambara Radhika. Nilambari
Krishna Mataji,
Radhika,
Rukmini.
you want to share?
Yes, Mataji. I was my own example. I would like to give an own example. Um, I was very new to devotional service, and I somehow got the chance to serve Bhakti Vikash Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti Vikash Maharaj. So I served him, and after I think few months, I saw him in Vrindavan, and then he was just coming out of the temple hall from ISKCON temple, and then I just met him and I asked him, Maharaj, are you not going to stay for chanting? It was morning chanting time, and he just looked around and he said, no, I'm going somewhere else to chant. And I said, why, Maharaj? He said, because sweet devotees like you don't let me chant here. That was, I thought, so inappropriate that I was disturbing him.
You were eager to get the association of some advanced devotee chanter. Haribo, Haribo. Thank you.
Mataji, one last, I really like the eagerness of Krishna when he got the offering of Sudama,
Beautiful.
that one I really like, and Sudama was trying to hide all that, the rice, bitten rice.
Yeah.
And then he was like, give it to me, give it to me. I really
That's
like
so
that.
beautiful. So that's really beautiful. Krishna's eagerness to accept the love of his devotee, right? So was it the broken rice that he was eager for, or he was really hungry for the devotion of Sudama, right? Just like in the Damodar song, we're still in a few days of Kartik Mas still right now, huh? And so when in the last verse of the prayer, the Damodar prayer that says that I'm worshiping the rope that binds his belly. What is that rope? It's actually the rope of love, right? So he's what's binding him. It's the love of his devotee. So what was Krishna hungry for? What was Krishna eager for? He was eager for the love of Sudama, the simplicity and the beautiful love of Sudama. Thank you. Great examples, beautiful examples. Thank you very much. Anybody else? We have 26 of you here. Anybody else like to share an example of appropriate or inappropriate eagerness? Krishna's eagerness, the devotee's eagerness, the neophyte devotee's inappropriate eagerness. Somebody like to share?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Haribo.
Actually, I want to share about inappropriate eagerness, Mataji. So
Okay.
that when we started Krishna consciousness, maybe 2 years later, we got service that is Janmashtami time. And I brought my mother. She'll see Janmashtami, how they are doing like that. But that time, I was so eager to do services in the temple. And I left her from morning to evening. I didn't even take care of her and what she is eating or anything. Nobody she knows. So I am busy with my services. I am so happy to do this all like that. But when I went evening, 7 o'clock like that, I approached her and I was that time I realized what I missed. Instead of doing my service for some time, I can do. After that, I can take her, mingle with the devotees, or introduce her, or some things like what. But after I realized it's not the proper way what I did. So Krishna made me realization, and slowly. Now at that time, mother, she's so kind. She was so happy. She said, "I'm so happy. This is vibration like that I felt," and she started chanting. And now she
Wow.
is doing 16 rounds daily itself.
Wow.
But my realization is. Even though that eagerness will be there for doing services, these are, but I need to think where that importance needs to give, like which side, like that. I realized in Mataji. And
Yeah.
after that, starting days, I missed relations also. Oh, we can't speak with brother. These are so I missed 3-4 years. I didn't speak with them. Now I am
Wow.
realizing relations are very very important. So now I
Yeah.
am somehow devotee, all devotees, Guru Maharaj mercy. Slowly I am mingling, and it's not like we need to avoid relations. We need
Very
to
good. Very good.
Sorry, I want to
Because all
express.
of these people, they're all Krishna's beloveds, right?
Yes, Mataji.
Krishna Bhakti Sadhya Kabunoy. Krishna
Mhm.
Bhakti is in the heart of everyone, and they're all beloved to Krishna. So we can't neglect any one of them.
Yeah, even with children, like they want to express. So instead of hearing their expressions, I will say, "Oh, why you can do like this?" With inappropriate eagerness, I make them very dull. Like these are so many I did, Mataji. Now by Krishna mercy and Guru mercy, like what I lacked, I am realizing, and I'm praying I don't want to do again.
Yeah, but Krishna will carry what you lack, right? Isn't that what he says in the Gita? I carry what you lack and preserve what you have. So even if we make mistakes, if we're sincere and running with our eyes closed and we're making so many mistakes, Krishna will cover for our mistakes, right? So, yeah. So we have to be careful to be kind and compassionate to all living beings, right? Thank you. It sounds like your mother is very forgiving. She sounds like
Yes,
a very
Mataji. Yeah, she was so happy. Now also she will say some things about Krishna I want to hear. Daily she will call, 10 minutes she wants to hear like that.
amazing.
Even I'm living so
beautiful.
far from her, but she wants to hear daily.
Wow, that's amazing. Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. Beautiful stories. Anyone else have anything they would like to share about how you abused your parents or your relatives and calling them different inappropriate names, or any glorious example of someone from Shastra?
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
I would like to share a story about my experience when I was cooking for my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Giriraj Swami. So he had a guest, and they were in a very deep, intimate discussion, and the lunchtime was given to us at 1 o'clock, 1 in the noon. And we were all ready by 1 in the noon, and there's no sign of Guru Maharaj and his guest. So we were waiting. 1 became 2, 2 became 2:30, 3. And then we started, then I was the I in me was, I'm the head cook, and it's important that Guru Maharaj eats on time. And I started sending him messages, it's time for lunch, it's time for lunch, it's time for lunch, please come and have your lunch. And unnecessarily I irritated him. So finally they came for lunch at 5 o'clock.
Oh my goodness.
And, of course they had the lunch, but then later on I was politely chastised that it's not that he's not aware of his timings, but there are certain times when he's in deep discussion and we are not supposed to disturb. So that was a major realization for me of, I guess it was inappropriate in one sense to show that eagerness that he should eat on time. And from another angle, perhaps it was correct also that he should eat on time. So it was really confusing for me at that time till I got corrected that he knows and he will come. So I have to just wait and be patient.
Very good. So you were very enthusiastic and caring for him, but to be a humble disciple to accept the prompt for when he wanted to take his prasadam. Thank you. That's a good story. Thank you. Very good. Well, we have just a few minutes. Does anyone else have a story they'd like to share?
Hare Krishna.
Realization? Yes. Leela Pritimai. Lalita Pritimai.
Devidasi. Please accept my humble obeisances, Mataji.
Haribol, my most humble obeisances to you.
I have an example for inappropriate eagerness. It's funny. It was like my life incident, but it's too funny. The time when my parents came to Krishna conscious, I was 4 to 5 years old. And then my father, for first time, he took me to the temple, took me to ISKCON. So he told me, please get ready. We are all going to a temple. So then I asked him.
Which ISKCON temple was this?
I'm from Hosur, Mataji. It was a small Namahata. It's near Bangalore.
Oh,
Our place
okay.
is near Bangalore.
Uh-huh.
So at that time, the ISKCON had started all like recently, some 5 years ago. It was a small Namahata during that time.
Uh-huh.
During 1997, I think so. So that he told me we are going to ISKCON. So the first time I heard in my life the word called ISKCON. And I thought in my language, Iska means sand. So I thought there is a temple and there is a lot of sand in the temple I can play. And I was so eager to go to that temple. When he took me and I saw there is no sand in the temple, but I saw just two dolls standing there with their hands upwards. So I was thinking, what kind of temple is this? What kind of God is this? I have never seen them before. But then there was my father's Siksha Guru, His Grace Muni Shrestha Gauradas Prabhu. So then he took me and he asked me like what was my name and what was my interest, and then he told me the importance of Gauranitai, who are they, and then he made me dance on the first day to the kirtan. That was a memorable experience, Mataji.
Wow, that's beautiful. So you had a lesson in eagerness.
Yes, Mataji.
Good. You were eager for the sand, but then you became eager for the lotus feet of Shishi Gornitai.
Yes, Mataji.
Very good. So thank you. Anyone else like to share any story or realization of eagerness, either appropriate realized eagerness or inappropriate eagerness? Subal Das, would you like to share?
Subal Prabhu is actually one of the staff at the VIHE.
Oh, okay.
He's actually been serving the retreats in a very grand fashion. He's been cooking for all the devotees. So
Wow.
enthusiasm and eagerness for serving all the, every year we've been having these retreats. He cooks for 600, 800 devotees.
That's amazing.
So
That is mystic power used in Krishna's service. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Subal Prabhu, for your selfless service. You will be blessed.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you so much. Harivo. Harivo. Jai. Well, I think we're out of time now. But thank you for the opportunity to speak about eagerness, and I pray that we can all become eager like Vidurani and give the banana peels of our hearts to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. And thank you for this opportunity. And I think we'll say goodbye now. But thank you very, very much for inviting me. It was my great fortune to be with you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you for giving your association. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Harivo. Thank you.
Thank you. Please accept my humble obeisances, Mataji.
Jai. Panchakalpachurvyascha Kipashindu Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Harivo. Harivo.
see you again soon.
Yes. Harivo. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Satrizale, Satrizale,